Hello and welcome to the second in the series of inspirational stories for Mental Health Awareness Week. My name's Emma Last from Progressive Minds, and joining me today is David Leech, who is somebody who I met earlier this year when I was training a mental health and wellbeing course. And when I decided to do this for this week, I really wanted to invite him to share his story with you. So thank you so much for doing that, David.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so shall we start then?
Yeah.
Okay. Please, could you tell me about your mental health journey?
Yeah. I think first thing I would say is, obviously, I've always had a mental health, as we all do. Really, I only never noticed it when it became a problem. I would say it's probably had been about 2.5 to 3 years in the making, whereby my previous career, I was a teacher and then a head teacher. And as all teachers will know, you kind of get to the half term and you start up here with your energy, and then by half term you're kind of down here, and you want to try and rejuvenate over that time, and hopefully you'll raise it up a bit. But what I was doing was getting to there and then starting the next half term, and I'll be down here, and then slowly but surely that carried on over about 2 years, maybe 3 years. I was never recuperating. I was never regaining any sort of energy or zest for life. So I would say I was existing more than living, and the job became life, really, rather than I was definitely living to work rather than working to live. Weekends and weekdays merged into one, and I was spending a lot of time in school on Sundays and Saturdays, just catching up on the things that I wasn't able to do during the week for whatever reason. And schools are very much a people-oriented place, and so I've always been a people over paper. So if someone knocks on my door, then that was important. I spoke to them there and then the paperwork obviously had to catch up afterwards. So it slowly but surely became evident that I wasn't myself.
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was. All I knew was I was constantly exhausted. I was going to work and putting on my Mr. Leech face mask and pretending to be this, as happy as I knew the children deserved me to be and knew the staff needed me to be. It's really sort of quite sad, really, that the job that I loved with the children that I loved being with, the staff that I loved to be working alongside, led me to a position where stress levels, etc., increased. I couldn't switch off. I was dealing with some pretty nasty safeguarding things that left me fairly, I would say, damaged at the time, and I didn't deal with it. I thought, just keep going. It's okay. This is what all teachers deal with. You'll be all right. Just keep going. And sadly, I didn't seek any help, or I didn't offload the weight that was on my shoulders to anyone else. And over time, that became a problem. At first, it was okay because it was just that's fine. But then gradually, the weight increases, and I in June of last year, I basically was resigned. The governors didn't want to accept my resignation, so therefore they gave me some time to consider it. It all became too much, and so I came home from work. They gave me some days off, just compassionate leave, just to get myself in order. I came home from work, and I got home from work and saw my wife and just burst into tears. And the tears kept coming, and I didn't really understand why, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. All I knew was something was wrong. I hadn't felt myself for such a long time. In fact, I couldn't really remember who David was. I knew what Mr. Leech was, but I couldn't really remember who David was. And so from there, I spent the next probably 2 to 3 days in bed or in the bedroom, darkness. On the 4th day, I lifted the blind, which was progress. I didn't have any, get up and go. I felt like I was a failure. I couldn't do the job. I wasn't being the dad that I wanted to be to my 2 children. I wasn't being the husband that I wanted to be to my wonderful wife. And I was basically rubbish at everything. That's all I had. My self-esteem, my self-efficacy was rock bottom. And I didn't know what to do. And I thought the way that I could solve it was to work longer and harder. And that actually just made it worse. So of that week, my wife said to me, you need to go and see the doctor. I'd been to see the doctor earlier a bit about getting some blood tests because I was just exhausted the whole time.
Yeah.
And he ended up prescribing me folic acid because on the blood test, my folic acid was low. To which I said, I'm not pregnant, am I? But he reassured me I wasn't, and that was okay. But so I took the folic acid and nothing really changed. And I thought, oh, it just must be just a job. It's just, I kind of accepted that in the head teacher role that stress was part of the job. Something now that I would heavily advocate against, that we just accept stress as part of our daily lives when we really shouldn't. It shouldn't be the norm. It should be exceptional circumstances, not the everyday. And workload and stuff like that was just too much, and I was doing too much. Not delegating enough because I knew that all my staff were working really hard as well, and they were, struggling with the workload of teachers and the pastoral care, etc. So I didn't feel that I was able to. Well, I didn't want to pass that on to them and to lumber them with something I could do. I thought.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor. Started explaining this to him. Probably within about 5 or 10 minutes, he turned around and said to me, "He said, well, you're depressed." Having never suffered with anything like it before, I didn't really know what that meant. I mean, I've worked with colleagues who have suffered with it, with families within family structures within schools, but actually feeling it and not really realizing how much depression and stress impacts on your physical health as well as your mental health.
Yeah.
I started crying again. So I cried again with the doctor. And it was quite an emotional conversation. And the thing that really set me off was he said to me, David, don't worry, we can fix this. And it was such a relief to be able to call it something, to know that actually I had something, that there was a reason why I was feeling like I was feeling, but equally to know that they could do something about it. And that he turned around to me and said, we'll have you back on your feet and we'll have you back to you. And that was such a relief. Basically, he then explained to me that there's two main types of depression. One is clinical and one is stress related. Mine was stress related, but because it had been going on for so long, it had become clinical. So I needed to medicate for that. So he gave me an antidepressant. Again, by this point, I didn't care. I didn't see any stigma around it. All I knew was I was really struggling, and I would have done anything. If he told me to run through a wall to go and do it, it will help. I would have done it. I just wanted to be me, and I wanted to be dad, and I wanted to be husband, and I wanted to be, just feel like I was living rather than just existing. And that was the beginning of the recovery, really. It wasn't a smooth ride at all. It was very difficult, and it took a while for the antidepressant to kick in. I had to change antidepressant. I had signed up through talking therapies. I have to say the NHS has been superb. My GP has been first rate, so understanding and so empathetic with the situation, but also wanting me to get better and challenging me to get better myself. I went through talking therapies and I got signed up to have counselling. At first it was over the phone, and I had a work-based counselling as well that was offered, and that was more just having a chat with someone on the phone, not really clinically important, but actually just being able to articulate it was quite useful. And then I got into talking therapies, and then I was diagnosed through a few surveys and things as having PTSD as well from the safeguarding issues that I've been dealing with. And there were 3 particular issues that came up. That was I was having night terrors. I was having flashbacks where I was there and I couldn't help the child that needed help. That was really quite harrowing. And then anxiety. I'd never ever felt anything like it. I could be sitting watching the television and I'd be fine and I'd be at 0, and then suddenly I was at 100 and my heart rate was going. I had a heart rate monitor just on my watch, and one night I was watching something and it wasn't even particularly exciting, but my heart rate was up at 140 beats per minute for no reason. I was having panic attacks, so I was sitting in my local church during a mass service, and I had a panic attack. And it was purely because there were lots of people around. Now, those are people who know me, know that I'm quite a sociable person, and that all stopped. I didn't want to go out. I didn't want to socialise. The idea of small talk became like scraping your nails down a fingerboard. Sorry, blood down a blackboard. It was so exhausting just having small talk. I didn't want to participate in anything other than I was getting home, I was eating, I was going to bed, I was getting up, I was going to work, I was doing that, and it was just a cycle that I was on. That started to break. I was very, very low at certain times, and during the summer, I was hoping to be back at work in September. During the summer, when that kind of the date was sneaking up, then that really affected my mental health, and I took a big downturn then. And we got back. We went away to Wales for a holiday, and when we got back, my wife and children went away to see friends of ours, and I stayed at home. And during that time, I just basically sat, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I'm too tired. I'm physically and mentally exhausted. I'm no good to anyone. I'm no good. I'm not a dad. I'm not a husband. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not a head teacher. But what else can I do? I couldn't see a way out, because I was, we've got the mortgages to pay. We've got a mortgage to pay. We've got expenses. Our kids are young. So I actually then made a plan to end my life, which now I talk about it seems completely irrational, but at the time it made absolute sense. So if anyone ever talks to you about being suicidal or having suicidal thoughts, don't dismiss it as just sort of an irrational act, because I was meticulous in terms of, I knew that my life insurance would pay out, because I'd had it for more than 12 months. And I'd done all the research to make sure that actually my family would be better off and everything would be better if I wasn't here. And it made sense that, the mortgage would be paid off, they would be financially stable and viable. And it just made sense at that moment. Now, fortunately, I've got a little dog named Boris. We named him before the new Prime Minister, and now it's looks like a bad choice at the moment. But no, Boris popped into the lounge when sitting there, and he put his head on my lap, jumped up on the sofa and put his head on my lap, and that little bit of contact just snapped me out of it. And I sort of went, oh, hang on, maybe I need to think about this a bit more. So I went to bed, and in the morning when I woke up, I realised what an awful thing it was to be even thinking like that. That's when the wave of guilt hits, and then you think to yourself, and then it becomes worse, because how could I even contemplate doing that to my children, to my wife, to my friends, to my family? It just, that even then makes it worse. So you feel even worse about yourself, because it's just a downward spiral. So I went back to my GP. He was very supportive. And then because I'd been diagnosed with PTSD as well, I was then having face-to-face cognitive behaviour therapy once a week with Zoe, my therapist, who was brilliant, very challenging, very emotional. Challenged me to go, and when I'd had the suicidal thoughts, etc., and thought about how I would actually carry out the act, that obviously escalates it. And so they had a care plan in place for me, that who could I talk to about it. So I had to come home and talk to my wife, because I hadn't said anything to her about my thoughts and actions and things. And that was difficult emotionally for me, because I didn't want it to be anyone blaming themselves, because it was nothing to do with anyone else. It was all to do with what was going on in here. And on the outside, I looked fine. I looked healthy. I could be happy. I could see people and be smiley and all that sort of stuff. But inside, it was just turmoil. It was I sort of equated my thoughts to being a colander of spaghetti, cooked spaghetti, and you couldn't see where one strand started and where it ended. It just became a quagmire of dark thoughts, really, and just negativity. So the CBT, the medication, the support of loved ones, all really helped. And it's coming up to a year or so. In June, it'll be a year since I left work and came home and cried. And I'm in a very different place now. It's been an incredible journey. It's been a humbling journey to know how many people actually in your life are there for you when you need them, and there for you when you don't need them. It's changed my outlook on life. It's made me make severe and drastic changes to my life. So therefore, I've changed careers. So I left the head teacher role, and and I took up a role in Crusader First Aid and Mental Health and Wellbeing. So I'm now a partner with them, and basically there to help other people, to prevent people getting to the acute stage that I was at. So I did the training with Fabe and yourself to become a trainer, to look after the physical with the first aid, but also the mental health and wellbeing, and help to change organisations and individuals' outlooks on mental health and the stigma, which unfortunately does still apply, because my doctor himself, who was really, really supportive when he said to me a certificate to sign me off from work, he asked me what he wanted, what did I want to have put on it? Did I want depression put on there? And that really struck me as something quite sad, that even a GP was saying to me, are you sure? Do you want this on or not? And I said, absolutely, I want it on there, because it's what I've got. I'm not going to hide anything. I came home from the doctors and I felt relieved. I went onto Facebook that night and put a status up to say, today's a good day. I've been diagnosed with depression, and actually this is the first step forward. So I've always been honest about it. I think it's really, really important that we do talk about it, because otherwise we'll never ever defeat this thing, and it's a horrible, horrible thing.
Yeah. So what do you think, if you pick one thing, what has helped you the most?
It's really hard to say one thing. It's kind of, I would equate that to Gordon Ramsay saying, well, what's the best ingredient you put into that risotto? You know, it is an amalgamation. It's not, no one thing in itself helps to turn it around. Asking for help was the biggest thing. Admitting that I had a problem and I needed some assistance absolutely was the biggest thing. And then really just taking time to talk it through and to actually articulate it to people, and to actually admit that I've been struggling, to admit that actually I wasn't coping.
So why do you think most, a lot of men struggle to talk about it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it's if you look at the statistics of people who do take their own lives, nearly 75% of people who do take their own lives are male, and that's a really sad statistic. And of the last statistics we had, nearly 7,000 people in 2017 took their own life. That's 7,000 people too many, if you ask me. That we get to that point that we want to do it. Now, why is it more men? I think primarily is because we don't talk about our feelings. I've got a really good group of friends who I know I could confide in about anything. We go to the pub, we'll meet up, and it's like, how you doing? Oh yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. And then the banter starts, and it all, we have a good laugh and a good all this sort of stuff. But we don't offload. And I think talking, we do talk, but we don't offload, and we don't talk about when we're struggling. And I know certainly I've been brought up with 3 sisters, and a very sort of matriarchal household in terms of male to female ratio. But I know that certainly when I've spoken to people in my life, my wife, etc., if she sort of is stressed about something, she'll want to talk about it and she'll offload it. And I'm a bit of a solution maker, and I think men tend to be. And I'm trying to fix the problem rather than just listen. And she said to me on occasions, just shut up. I don't want answers. I just want you to listen. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think we, us chaps, generally, that is, it's a stereotype, I know, but generally the statistics back it up to say we don't share it. And I was struggling, and I didn't even know I was struggling. I didn't even know that I had a mental health issue myself, because I'd never spoken to anyone else who would really help on themselves. Subsequently from it, I've spoken to a lot of friends and colleagues, male and female, who are struggling, who've come forward and said to me, thanks for sharing, because actually that's how I've been feeling, and I've been doing this, that, and so it's bringing a conversation around. And I'm really passionate, with hence the reason I left a career of 20 years to go into the mental health and first aid game, because we can make a difference. If we all take a stand against it, we can make a difference. But unless we actually grab it by the horns and say, this is not something to be ashamed of, this is part of us, and it's something we need to help each other with.
Something that was brought up on in a conversation I was having with, it was a group of men actually that I was training on mental health, and one of them came up with a really good point. He said women talk face to face, so they go and they talk. They don't necessarily have a purpose. They just talk. and men generally talk side by side. So you go to the pub, you go to watch football, you go and watch rugby, you go and play golf. You're generally doing something. You don't just meet up to just talk rubbish, have chat, but without much purpose. Men's purpose is. So I thought it was a really, really good point. You know, that he made. I thought it was a great point. So, do you have just one tip for anyone struggling in the current crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, I wrote an article about this very thing. I put it on my LinkedIn account and my Facebook account. I called it "Suffering in Stormy Seas."
Yeah.
And it's really, I think the biggest thing about our own mental well-being is to switch off noise. Now that not necessarily literally switching off noise, but actually the noise that goes on in our own minds. So I'm a big believer in making sure that electronics are switched off at certain times, and just that we're not constantly on Facebook or social media, although I know we're streaming that on here now, but so to actually to take stock about what's around you. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is to live in the present, to not worry about, catastrophize about the future, to not harp on about how things were in the past and say, it was so much better when. That's a negative mindset to get into, because you can never match what happened with those rose-tinted glasses, and we never know what's going to happen in the future. And actually, if we just live in the moment and realize what we have and what we have around us, whether it be family or friends or a role that you find really fulfilling. I said in the article that never has a shelf stacker been more important to British society than it is now. And I really believe that. I was listening to the radio earlier, and they were talking about low value workers, or low skilled workers, sorry. And I really do dislike that phrase. Because actually, do you know what? Without that, it's like nature. If you take one part out of the system, it collapses. And we all need to appreciate those people around us who do the things that perhaps we don't want to do, who do the roles that we perhaps have undervalued for such a long time. And I think that if we just take notice of that, Thursday nights at 8 o'clock is one way in which we can live in the present and just take a moment to show gratitude to amazing people who are doing amazing things at the moment. So I think my advice would be just to live in the present, to not worry about tomorrow. Just look around you, and just say, actually, do you know what? Life's all right. I'm pretty lucky. It's all good.
Yeah. And think about, basic things in terms of what things can you be grateful for. It's a simple strategy, isn't it? But it works effectively.
Gratitude lists and things like that. So it sounds very Americanized, but a gratitude list, and just saying every day one thing that you actually genuinely are, and then not forcing it. Not saying, it's 8 o'clock in the morning, I've got to get up and write a gratitude list. It's actually just to turn around and go, this morning I was in the park with the kids riding bikes, and just seeing their little faces going on, and enjoying it. And I was driving around or cycling around, saying to my daughter, just listen to the birds. This time last year I wouldn't have done that.
You wouldn't have heard them, would you?
No.
No.
It's blocking out noise and actually focusing on what's there.
Yeah. Okay, so last question. It's Mental Health Awareness Week this week. That's why we're here, and the theme this year is kindness. So how has giving or kindness helped you?
That makes me feel quite emotional, just the question, to be honest with you. I've been overwhelmed with kindness through my family, friends, colleagues, people since I've left my job as a head teacher. Colleagues have become great friends. I would say, and I've always tried to live by the mantra of that I hope that people who come into contact with me leave feeling better about themselves. And I think that belief is grounded in the fact that humans are innately good, and that we are innately geared up to be kind to other people, and we and get rid of the selfish, the materialistic side of things. And I think this current pandemic is actually making us focus on what's important far more so than in previous years. I think if we really focus on that and actually take time, so just give someone a little bit of time, and really listen to what they're saying to you. And when you say to them, "Oh, how you doing?" and they say, "Oh, yeah, I'm all right," just think about that and say, "Oh, are you?" That friend you haven't seen for 3, 4, 5 weeks, or haven't heard or haven't seen them post anything on some, just pick up the phone and say, "No, how are you? I've noticed you've not been, everything all right?" And you're not prying. You're just there and say, "Well, if you need me, just ask." And I think that's kindness is there in our actions, and I think we're called as brothers and sisters to be kind to each other and to look out for everyone around us as if they were our immediate family. Because kindness changes the world. It really, really does. Kindness changed my life. It's given me a new sort of being and a new existence and a new purpose. Whereas I'd lost that hope, and those dark times in August seem so far away now. It's lovely. Whereas in August the light was very, very dim in the distance. In the tunnel that I was in, now I'm bathed in light, and there's this tiny pinprick of a dark thing. But I still have to manage, and I still have to self-care, and I still have to make sure that I do my exercise, and I still have to make sure I'm getting enough sleep and things like that. Absolutely, it's not gone away, but it's so much better than it was. I feel David again, as opposed to Mr. Leech, and that's a great place to be. And I can only thank those people around me who have been there. And I know doing the training with yourself and actually now implementing that through Crusader is great, and it's so rewarding to actually start conversations with people and actually say, "Do you know what, I was there and I understand, and it will be okay." And it really will be okay. And that's what I would say to the people watching this today. I've not done anything special. I've purely been surrounded by people who have helped. And that actually, if you're struggling, just pick up the phone, just go to see your GP, talk to a friend, talk to a colleague, talk to a professional, and just get help. Because the first time you ask for it is the hardest. And as soon as you ask for it, you will be amazed at what can happen and how your life can be transformed by people just showing kindness. My GP showed me kindness. Gave me some medicine as well, but he showed me kindness. So that would be the thing. I would say, just be kind. Just don't go out of your way to make people who come into your presence all the richer when they leave it. Just from you being there and giving them time.
Well, that's my last question. Is there anything else you want to add that we've missed?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just that I would implore individuals, organisations, and I work with organisations and individuals now through the mental health and wellbeing training that FABE have developed. And it's much more about being proactive and changing the way that we view mental health, and actually, rather than just putting a sticking plaster on it in a first aid situation. The reason I training with FABE was because it is very proactive. It is about changing ideas, attitudes, but also helping in the acute stage as well. So I would say, if you get opportunities to do training, whatever whoever your employer is, do the training, because actually the more of us who are conversant in mental health vocabulary and conditions, then that's the only way we're going to beat this other pandemic, which is silent. It's the one that doesn't get the headlines. COVID-19 gets headlines. If depression was a virus, we would be in a very different conversation now. Unfortunately, it's unseen, it's silent. It works because it wants you to be isolated. It wants you to stay quiet. It wants you, because that's how it feeds. It feeds on your silent thoughts and negativity breeding in your own mind. If you don't let it, if you talk about it when you're struggling, and you say to someone, "Look, do you know what? I feel really, really rubbish at the moment. I don't know what's wrong with me." Just by doing that and sharing that, and the more people we have in, the more organisations who are able to spot the warning signs. My story was preventable. If I had taken action initially and sought counselling to offload my own burdens, I would have been in the situation that I found myself in. However, I'm very, very appreciative that I have been through that situation, because it's given me a completely different outlook on mental health, and it's given me a whole different appreciation of life, and know how lucky I am. So if you get the opportunity to do any mental health and wellbeing training, take it, because it will really change the lives of yourself, but also people you come into contact with.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting because I know we've had conversation about, you know, because I really emphasize how much within those sessions that, you know, it's about, you know, it's the further and deeper that you get into it, you know, the more you withdraw, the harder it is to actually get those words out of your mouth. And, you know, those, in terms of those thoughts, I mean, that some of the things we've talked about, some of though, it gets you to a point where you feel like your most rational thoughts are really rational, but in reality, they're completely and utterly irrational.
Absolutely,
you know, and you know, and because we had some really good conversations around that, didn't we?
Yeah.
So so
I think
it's always
said to me when I had the guilt thing after having the sort of suicidal thoughts, and I was racked with guilt then, and she said, you know, and I was, because again, it was one other thing that I was failing at. And she said to me, but would you have thought that if you were well, would you have thought, even contemplated that? And I said, no. And she said, there you go. You're not well. Don't beat yourself up about it. You know, you didn't do anything. We're putting things in place to make sure you're safe, so on and so. So you're right. It's a vicious cycle that you have to break. And unfortunately, it has to be the person who's suffering it has to kind of make a stand, and then everything else will just come around. Once you realise it and recognise it, everyone else takes over and helps. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think you do realise how much of an impact it will have on many people, but you know, it takes a lot to come and start talking about, you know, your mental health journey. It's, you know, we've all, you know, in terms of kind of that emotional attachment to it as well, and you know, when you shared your story with us on that course, and you were very quick to do that as well, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. So that's why you sprung to the top of my mind. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today, and I hope it, even if it just helps one person, that's one person, one more person that, you know, that might just get the help that they need. So helps with our mission to raise awareness. So,
yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. I'm really humbled to be asked to do it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you ever so much. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
All right. We're off now, aren't we? Are we off? No.
Shall I sing a song while we're waiting for you to let off?